How's it going, everybody? Jeff Chrysler here, a detail enthusiast and owner of Right Way Heritage Trimming. And today I'm going to show you how to trim some XK120 seats. We're going to go from these old tattered covers to these beautiful new seat covers. We'll show you the full restoration transition. So I'm going to start this video with showing you where we started. Okay guys, so so I can capture how everything began, I've just had all this XK120 fixed head coupe original interior dropped off, or what's left of it. So we've got the seats here. You can see these are the original backrests. Was not two-tone on this, you can tell. Yeah. These are the curved back seats, so they've got that distinctive curve in the backrest. Very unique, and so here's these plates. You can see how the piping is done here. It's cored out and wrapped around the edge, right on the corner there, just below it. And then up here, everything's cored out and wrapped around the edge, as we know. And then, yeah, you've got the leather coming down and just finishing this bit here. You can see it doing that. And of course, you've got these panels up in the top here, which again, they're nailed. So you can see the double sets of nails going along, whereas these end plates are screwed with the standard flathead screws. This is the thin vinide or Rexine, I should say, that Jaguar like to use on lots of this stuff. Of course, the seats are all leather, so that's what they did. So yeah, we've got a pair of backrests. We're gonna take those all apart, inspect the wood. We're gonna take all the steel pieces out, get them blasted and repainted in the proper. You can see some of that color here. That seems to be what Jaguar used back in the day on these things. Here are the what's left of the cushions. So the upholstery and the foam have been ripped out of here and they are long gone, so we don't get to see that. But this is what's left of the frame. So you've got a 1/2-inch birch plywood frame that's got a cutout, and then you've got these steel trays in the bottom of them. And yeah, the seat foam would float over this, but it gives it some room to go up and down. Often what I've seen in here is like a black grain board that's on the bottom of the cushion, just to fill that spot. Here's an original tag here. I wonder what it said. It looks like drop head coupe. Interesting. So maybe these seats aren't from this car. Maybe they came out of a different car. That's potentially. But that's interesting. It says drop head coupe and then a number. Interesting. And that tag certainly looks original. You can see other original details. They do this. So as the leather's brought around and tacked along the edge, they cover the tacks with a row of this edging. And it's just thin Rexine again. It's folded over itself. Paper thin Rexine. They used it in a lot of areas in these Jags, but they used a combination of different types of vinyl too, I will say. So here is the lower cushion frames. Again, these are done in that gray-green color. Yeah, you can kind of see it better here. It is quite gray. It is quite gray. It's a lot less green than I've seen in some cases. So we'll get that reproduced. There's some good evidence of it there. I'm gonna clean this up and try to get a really good match on the color. So just taking apart these original seats, and I just wanted to capture some of the original details for Jag owners out there who are going for accuracy. So the original screws that came out of here, they are a domed or a curved head, standard flat blade screwdriver, nickel plated brass. You can see where the nickel plating is rubbed away on the head there. It's brass underneath, and that is nickel, it's not chrome. Here's one that's in better condition. It's still got the nickel on the head. But these are the screws anyway. And then of course, this is Rexine covered, so that's the really paper thin Rexine that you see there. Not to be confused with vinide leather cloth. That's what they used on the piping there. It's a slightly thicker, it's still a thin vinyl, but it's a thicker vinyl than this stuff was. Okay, and this is just showing the moquette, how it's tacked along the bottom edge of the plywood here. You can see how the leather's cut and folded to go around the legs here. You can see how this end is trimmed. It has this little fold that comes around. It's just like a 2-inch section there that nails to the inside of that hardwood panel. Now, you can see how this corner is on the end. That was the end panel just coming off there. And of course, these are black bitumen board, which is what they use, not to be confused with a lot of the black board you get today. Bitumen board is obviously bitumen impregnated, so you can curve it and bend it and it's not just going to snap. It's a very versatile material that they used to use all the time for panels back in the day. Hard to find now, very hard to find now. So, and then here's this upper panel. One more thing I wanted to point out on these ends is, let me just turn around here, the folds that are noticeable. You can see this top is just pulled around here. You can see that's your original color and how different it is. But yeah, the folds here, there's a noticeable fold on itself right there in that top corner. So this isn't, you know, foldless like a lot of people try to do it, including myself. So you can have a fold there. There's factory proof. And then there's another fold here. It's just a short, simple fold on itself. It's not trying to pull out all the wrinkles and keep it even all the way along. It's just bring it to where it needs to fold and fold it back on itself. And then here's this moquette coming around. So interesting study of how they actually trimmed these. Just removing this panel under the top back edge, and you can see all the little nails used to install it. Of course, they went crazy on the end there, full roll of them. I do believe this is all factory. And of course, the board itself is 1/8" birch ply again, whereas they use bitumen for this board. So, and there you can see how the moquette is rolled over on itself and tacked along this curve. And then up here, it just rolls up onto the wood and is covered by that other panel. And here's the tacks holding the top leather in place. So you can see how that's done. And here we are. I've just untacked this rear moquette piece. Here's where it was wrapped around the edge. And when you unfold it, here is this inner tack strip. So this is how it's started, is by nailing this on first. And here's where it's folded back on itself to go around the curve, and you've got a row of tacks going doing that. So there you go. And just one more thing I'll highlight here is this is coming apart. I've just undone this, and you can see the end piping comes right around and goes and ducks in along the edge of this hardwood. And then this just covers over it. So it is right on that edge like that. Here we are coming apart. As I peel the leather away, you've obviously got the wadding that goes in on top of the Hessian flaps that they have sewn in with each layer of piping. Just like the new covers, although they use like a cloth material that's a lot stronger than this old Hessian. But it's interesting, you can see, so this cotton material would come on a roll, and they would just cut pieces off of the roll, and they have different thicknesses of this material on rolls. So this would be the thinner stuff. You'll see on the inside they sometimes use heavier, like 1/2 or 3/4 inch thick stuff. But it's interesting, they actually use tacks to just throw it in place, put a couple tacks in it, just like 1, 2 here, to hold it in place. And of course the tack head just gets buried in the cotton, so you never see it. But yeah, so this is just a piece that they would have put in after the fact, after they've tacked this in place. So we'll get that off and show you the next layer. Okay, and as we lift the leather cover up, here is the next layer of wadding that went in. You can see where the piping fell on that. But this would have gone in secondary once this layer of piping was tacked down to its proper curve. And that is how we get the curve in the seat, is how that piping is tacked down inside. So this is, like I was saying, thicker than the outer layer, which was, you know, 1/4 inch maybe. This is like 1/2 inch at least, and you can see it was just cut from a roll. It's one big piece, and let's see if we can get the end of it here. It wraps right around the edge here, but it's actually, ooh, at least 1/4 if not 1 inch thick. But it just lays in place on top of the edge of that piping, even with the edge of that piping. It's just kneaded into position. And of course you've got under it another layer, another flap of material to give it a nice separation. So yeah, done in stages like this. So we'll get this out of here and the main cover so you can see the curve and how that's installed in it. So again, just with the top of the seat here, we've taken out that big thick piece of wadding, the 1 inch stuff, and now it's followed by this big horsehair pad that goes along, which actually was done in 2 sections, interestingly. I don't think I've ever seen that before. It's usually 1 piece, but anyway. But yeah, that has just been glued in place. I'm just peeling up the glue. There's that one. Oh, a couple tacks actually. Glue and a couple tacks. I'll get this one as well. Okay. And now here you can see, this is how they do this curve. It's just this material that they figure out the low spot is going to be right here. And it's carefully tacked into that curved position. So once that's established, everything kind of is built off of that. And obviously it comes to the corner here, and whatever it needs to be to make this end pleat even with the rest. Although on some XKs you'll see this end pleat will vary in width. Some of them are done to be even. Some of them I've seen them a lot narrower than the rest of the pleats. So it depends on the seat cover and the pleat arrangement. Some of these have 9 pleats, some of them have 10 pleats, some of them have 11 pleats. They seem to change their pleating arrangement on these over the years throughout XK production. And of course with Roadster fixed head, drop head, there's variations there. So make sure you got the right spec for your car. Okay, and tacks all removed now. Here we are with the final layer. You've got your Dunlopillo, commonly used throughout all British sports cars. Dunlopillo under foam, which you can see it's got the square cutouts, so there's lots of loft there, lots of squishiness. If it didn't have those square cutouts, this would be solid and wouldn't go anywhere. But no, these are nice soft seats. And yeah, they've used a series of Dunlopillo. Look at the 2 layers there. So it's like about 1.25 inches or so thick. Probably would have come on a roll with the square cutouts on the backside. And they've, that's interesting that they've layered it like that to create the thickness of the foam. So you've got an upper one and a lower one that doesn't come as far, and that's how they make allowance for that dish in at the top, whereas it's full thickness at the bottom here. So interesting ways of creating that shape on a production line. Okay, and here we are, cover's finally off. You can see where it was glued just along that edge. Of course, this edge, they'd established that end pleat by tacking it in place and getting a nice roll over the edge. The pleats are all cotton wadding filled pleats, as everything back then was for British sports cars, auto industry. Yeah, nothing much to show you here, just those details. And of course, now with the cover off, get that out of the way, you can see how this Dunlopillo was tacked in place. Of course, when in areas like that where you got the thickness of the pleats to hide any of that, this is just trying to create this inner foundational shape. And yeah, tacked into the sides with big long tacks, and same thing with here, tacked into the sides. So very interesting how they created this with layers. Here you can see on the bottom, there's that secondary layer. So yeah, now that we've got it apart, also notice this is this, wouldn't call it a tack strip because we're not tacking into it other than to hold it down, but it's a strip that goes along the edge here so that that end pleat can roll around, and then there'll be like an indented area here for that end panel to fit into. So it wasn't just flush, obviously, rolled over this edge. So we'll be probably making a new one of these because I think I might end up replacing this plywood. We'll see. I don't know, actually. It's pretty good. Often this stuff gets delaminating, but you know, this might be okay. I might just get in there and reseal it with new shellac and try to extend its life some. Obviously these hardwood pieces are in great shape. So here we can see the wood, the backrest assembly with the steel painted legs. Now that it's all out of here, you can see really good example of that gray, that greenish tinted gray color that these legs were. So I'll be taking this to get color matched, and we'll get those sandblasted and resprayed. I'll take them all apart here, but notice the original hardware is black oxide finished, black phosphate, and so it's, you know, screws, nuts going into, well, this one is screws coming through with nuts on the back. These screws here go through with T-nuts on the back that are hammered into the wood. So, and yeah, upon further inspection, I think I am going to reuse all of this wood. It's in pretty good shape. The delamination is absolutely minimal. You really can't tell. Everywhere it needs to be strong, it's very strong. So I'm gonna strip these down, take the metal legs off, get them refinished. I'm gonna give these a thorough cleaning, and then I'm gonna re-shellac the wood to give it some more life expectancy and give it a chance to survive. So yeah, it's actually in pretty good shape. No warping, and no real delamination that you can see here, so that's good. You know, obviously a tack opened up that spot there, but I think if I come along with a little bit of epoxy putty to fill in some certain areas like that, or wood filler, we should be fine. Yeah, the rest of it's in really good shape. So that's very good. So here's just showing you this original color on these legs, that all the seat steel was painted, and it is it's a gray, but it has a real greenish tint to it. So we're gonna take that in and get it color matched. Nice to see that original stuff that has spent its whole life up against the wood in the shadows, so it's never seen daylight. So there you go. Now, meanwhile, with the seats, as you can see, I've gotten these are the cushion pans. I sent them out for sandblasting and then repainted them in the oxide red primer. And then that's the original cushion ply, and I've cut new ones out of 1/2-inch birch plywood. So I got a new pair of those to go with the pans. So I just got to get those pans were originally hand tacked all the way along to hold them to the cushion pans. Over here you can see here's the seat backs. I've got these the legs all sandblasted and repainted in that proper gray with kind of a greenish tint to it, greenish bluish tint. So got that really nicely matched and got those nicely painted. So they're reinstalled with their original black oxide hardware. So we got both of those ready to go. So that's all looking good. And of course, here's the rest of the cushion frame pans painted in that same paint again. I've still got to install, there's the adjustment levers that have to go on here with a rivet assembly. So I need to do those still, but yeah, these are all looking good, so I can start building up the seats and doing all the foam work and trimming. So I'm just continuing on trimming the cushions now. You can see I assembled the metal pans, which I had sandblasted and repainted in the oxide red primer, and then they are tacked around to the new plywood base that I made. And I just put a piece of Hessian glued into the bottom there. And then, yeah, new molded latex foams, glued and carefully stuck. You gotta fold the edges all in so that it sticks. It's a little bit, well, it's a good inch or so too big, so you gotta tuck the bottom of the foam in. And then once the foam's on, then I glue up the cover itself and just glue a band underneath, obviously, like this, and a square basically, and then you stick one side, get it all even here, and pull it across to the other side and make sure it's nice even over there. You don't want it doing this kind of a thing. And importantly, when you pull it across, you got to keep this bead of piping nice and straight. And so it's you can see the foam already has the below your knee definition there, so you keep the piping tight up against that. And then I use like a 1/2-inch foam. The factory used wadding here, similar 1/2-inch stuff. So I put that on, and now I'm gonna cut that off. Sometimes this is you know, to hide the fact that this inner foam is sometimes, depending on who made the covers, sometimes the covers are a little big and they overhang the foam a bit, and so this will help to hide that and blend it. But in this case, these covers fit beautifully with these latex foam, so I'm just going to cut off this foam even with the foam under here. Should be fine, and then and then it's just a case of pulling the skirt around and tacking it off evenly all the way around. And there you have it. There's the finished cushions. So just pulled everything around and stapled it off on the bottom. They were originally hand tacked, and as you may remember, originally they actually had like a black tape type of stuff that went around that they put the tacks in to cover the initial layer of tack. So I can still do that with hand tacks to hide the staples. We'll see what the owner wants. If we're going for concourse, that's certainly what I would do. So, but yeah, these look great, and that tray gives it, you know, a bit of space to drop down into, so it's not just solid rock hard. So it's important to have a bit of space there in the bottom, in the center. So it gives you that relief, which makes the cushion that much softer and more comfortable to sit in. So on to the backrests. Okay, so just getting into the trimming of the backrests of these seats. I'm not gonna, mention who I got these kits from, but the seat covers that I got were incorrect. They sent me some 11 pleat seat backs. Now with all of these XKs, that you gotta really check your specs with the seats, because they had seats with 9, 10, and 11 pleats. And the way it goes, early roadster cars, OTS cars, came with 11 pleats like this. And you can see how narrow that is. The pleats themselves are a certain size as well. They're generally a bit narrower because there's 11 of them. That's, you know, a bit narrower. The top is always the same. This section here should be the same with all of them. But all fixed head coupe cars, they either had, the early ones had 10 pleats, curved back with 10 pleats, and then later on they moved to a straight back seat that didn't have that curve in it, and they had 9 pleats. That was only the later fixed head coupes and drop head coupes. And so what I've had to do, I had to contact them, show them the discrepancy, show them the information that it is wrong, and they sent me back some 10 pleat ones. Now with these 10 pleat ones, I think they've added a much wider outer band, which didn't look right to me. And of course I've checked here's the original covers that came off of this. Glad to have these so I can reference them. And that is indeed the narrower band. It's the pleats themselves that got larger with 10 pleats. So what I'm gonna have to do to make all of this work, because as you can see, I'm just laying it onto the seat here. I've started, you know, I've added that foam there. I've marked where the pleats go. I always build with these XK seats. You always trim the cushions first, as I've done over there. So then I can bolt this up to the cushion and mark where the cushion pleats are falling so that I can make these pleats fall in line. However, this last pleat is the one that you got to bend over, and it's often a little bit different than the rest because it kind of takes up the difference, whatever it may be. But if I set that roughly where it needs to go there to make a proper pleat, this side is way over the edge. It's, you know, a good inch, inch and a quarter. So you can see the edges right there. It's that far over. So it's not, and that's even with a smaller pleat here. So it's just not going to work with this. So this is what happens sometimes when you're using other people's kits. You gotta make adjustments, and so I'm gonna have to, luckily I've still got these old ones, I'm gonna have to unpick the pleated section from the outside piece and put this outside piece onto this outside piece, swap them over. And that will give me some backrest covers I can use. So that's what I'll do next. Here you can see as I'm picking it apart, that's the difference in width of these side bolsters. So I need the smaller one. This bigger one is just not gonna work. It'd be hanging over the edge of the seat. And you know, even with it on there, it's still too big. And this is now lined up, at least on the first pleat. You can see how the 10 pleats are just altogether bigger pleats than the 11. So they come, the finished thing comes to the same size left to right, right? This is 11 pleats, this is 10 pleats. They're the same in the end, left to right. But this bolster should also stay the same. So, okay, so I re-sewed the new surround onto the 10 pleat, and now we're just installing the cover. So first thing I always do with these type of XK covers is I figure out what the width of this pleat needs to be the same, and draw a line on the back, and then I glue that line even with this edge, and I just throw a couple staples in to keep it there. And then I pull the rest of the cover over so that this is falling on this edge, and everything seems to fall in line. And basically this line of piping should be even with the line I made on from the cushion there. So I should mention that because of the pleat variation, the cushions were always 10 pleat no matter what. So those 10 pleats went along with 9 pleats, 10 pleats, and 11 pleats. And you know, some of the pleats would line up sometimes, but there was often several pleats that don't line up perfectly if you study them. So it's just you know, how it goes with these pleat arrangements. I don't know why they decided to change the amount of pleats and why they did certain things, but it is what it is. So now you can see I've put the curve into the cover, and it's always the lowest point, sort of like the third pleat from the end is usually the lowest. So I start there and then just make this an even climb here and an even climb here. You want a nice smooth transition like that. Okay, and then of course I have to cut the material going around the corner, and this is nice and glued and pulled tight so that this is nice and parallel here. So now I'm gonna glue up that material all the way around, right even with the seam. I'm gonna glue up this shoulder roll. I'm gonna glue the inside edge of that foam and stick that inside edge along here so that it does a nice even roll when I pull it around. Okay, there you can see I've got the shoulder bolster foam glued in on its end along that seam. So got to make sure you get a really nice glue joint. So now I'm going to be pulling this around and pulling all the wrinkles out of it and stapling it off using this around the back side. So you always staple this and then pull the leather around separately. And I often like to do an 1/8 inch foam gluing to this seam to cover this, just to hide this transition once it's all pulled around. So I'll probably be doing that as well. I got to cut it into an L shape like that as well. So we'll get this pulled around and show you the results. And I should also point out, I've got another small foam in here that just fills in this top area to keep it from drooping down. You want to have a nice arc here, so I just fill this area with this smaller foam so that this goes down over top of it. So here we are pulling this around and stapling off the calico. You can see the nice curve we're creating in the backrest here. So, and then it comes out to full height on the side. I still have to do down this side, but yeah, coming along, creating that shape. So once I've got this all stapled in place and I'm happy with the shape, I'm gonna come in with another 1/8 inch foam glued to the seam allowance here and pulled around to fill in that area. Okay, I've been plugging along and pulling the leather around, and you can see the wrinkles disappearing the tighter it gets. So it's just been pulling it as tight as we can. As I showed before, I did put an 1/8 inch foam in here to make this nice and softer and to hide that seam allowance. And of course the originals, as you remember, had wadding in here to do the same purpose. So yeah, been working my way around, getting the bottoms done, stapling those off, and now I'm just getting into this side, and you gotta, you know, core out the piping and get that all done, and yeah, finish it off. So next steps, once I finish this top edge, is I'll be installing the moquette back. And remember, there's a tack strip that the moquette glues to first, and then the tack strip is tacked down, and then this little curve part is just the moquette folded over itself, and it has a couple tacks, visible tacks through that curve. So we'll get that done next and carry on. Okay, got a little ahead of myself, but yeah, installed that tack strip in here. It comes up to here, and then just glued and folded the moquette over itself with the 3 tacks there, and then pulled it across and stapled it off on this side. Rolled it back on itself and stapled it off along the bottom here, and of course along the top. And then I reinstalled these panels. These ones are new vinyl covered ones. These are the original ones that I recovered in fresh vinyl with the original screws and the original holes. So that finishes the squab. So you can see how that looks. Just a thing of beauty. So we'll bolt it up to the cushion frame and see how it matches up with the other one over there. There we are, look at that. The finished XK120 fixed head coupe seats. So 10 pleat, like I say. Later fixed heads became straight back with 9 pleats. These are the curved back with 10 pleats. And of course, all XKs had 10 pleats on the cushions. And yeah, looking really good. Again, fixed head coupe and drop head coupe cars all had a flat back, whereas the Roadster cars, there was a cutout where the leg kind of dished in here. There was a cutout for clearances. So that's another distinctive difference in the fixed head, drop head seat models. But if I look at the top here, you can see that distinctive curve that these backrests have. So yeah, looking really nice. Can't wait to fit these in the car once all the carpet is finished. So now I've still got to trim the center armrest section, which is also, it's, you know, 3 biscuit pleats with a tan front section, similar to the cushions. So yeah, quite pleased with these. They came out really nice. So I'm going to call that a video. That's just covering the restoration trimming of the seats. Until next time, I'll be following this up with a video showing the complete trimming of the rest of the car. So until then, I'm Jeff Chrysler, a detail enthusiast and owner of Right Way Heritage Trimming. We'll see you again.